Hey everyone, what you just heard was Singularity Virtual Bass, the ultimate bass instrument for modern rock and metal. In this video, I'm going to show you how Singularity can transform the low end of your music from dull and lifeless into something truly powerful, headbanging, and realistic. We'll explore its features, walk through the interface, and hear some examples of how it performs. Let's dive in. First up, here's our main interface. When you load up Singularity, you'll be greeted with a fun animation of the bass guitar while the samples load in the background. You can see we went with a UI that's fun but clean and straightforward. Front and center, we have all the main controls for volume, tone, and articulation switching. This is where you'll craft your fundamental bass tone. At the top here, you'll find the preset browser, which gives you quick access to a range of mix-ready presets that we created to cover a wide range of genres. With Singularity, we wanted to minimize having to hunt through multiple menus. It's all laid out to keep your workflow fast and focused. The most important part of a bass library is, well, the bass. I wanted to pick something that first and foremost sounded amazing, but was also unique and versatile in tone. And what I landed on was a custom Kiesel 5-string P-bass with jazz pickups. It delivers exceptionally tight tuning stability, perfect intonation, and a powerful articulate tone that easily cuts through any mix. Its custom-mount jazz pickups offer a wide tonal range from deep, focused lows to crispy, snappy highs, making it ideal for both aggressive and nuanced playing styles. Above the bass, we have the preset browser. As I mentioned earlier, we included many mix-ready presets that cover a wide range of styles. I'll go through a couple examples here to give you an idea of the diversity to expect. Next, in Singularity, you get both pick and fingerstyle playing in the same library. No separate libraries or expansions needed. Pick style is bright and aggressive, perfect for cutting through a dense metal mix. Fingerstyle is rounder, warmer, and ideal for more technical or melodic parts. But if you have it play the MIDI notes hard, it can get a nice aggressive clank out of it too. And switching is as simple as flipping this switch or doing a key switch in MIDI. Next, the dynamic slider is a quick and easy way to force Singularity to make all of your MIDI note velocities be either softer or louder, regardless of what the velocities are programmed as. The closer you get to the right, the higher the velocity of all the MIDI notes will be. The closer you get to the left, the lower. You may find this feature useful in instances where you need your bass performance to be softer or louder as a whole and don't want to edit your MIDI velocities. All right, next on the bottom left here, we have the EQ tone control. This gives you control of the bass DI signal, similar to how EQ knobs on a bass guitar would. So if you feel like you want to tweak the lows, low mids, high mids, you can adjust those here. You can bypass the EQ altogether if you'd rather have it untouched. Next, we have the amp simulation section. This was partly modeled using AI and machine learning, but it's a bit more special than just an amp sim. It also includes the ability to split your bass signal up between clean DI and distorted signal using this knob right here, split frequency. This allows you to adjust where the bass signal gets split between clean and distorted. For example, right now it's set to 320 Hz, meaning all frequencies below 320 Hz are unaffected by the amp sim part of the signal chain. It's just clean DI, and everything above is going through the amp sim and cab sim. Let me also demonstrate what happens to the bass tone when you play with the split frequency and balance knobs. First, I'm going to put balance at 100%, just to show you what it sounds like without any clean DI signal getting in. It sounds like there's no low end at all, right? If you look at split frequency, it's cutting everything below 320 Hz. So that makes sense that we aren't hearing much low end right now. Now let's take that down to 20 Hertz. This means we have the full bass frequency signal now getting reamped. And now you can hear the low end is back in the bass. But that low end is much more compressed and distorted, making it less impactful in the mix. Watch what happens when we put the balance at 50% and the split frequency back at 320. The bass tone still retains that distorted bite and grittiness, but now also keeps that powerful and heavy low end from the clean DI. This is the way the vast majority of high-level producers and artists create their bass tone for both live and studio use. This is something no other bass virtual instrument in the world does other than Singularity. If you have a bass tone you love from the past 10 to 15 years, it was probably done with some variation of this method. Next, we have the gain knob. As you might suspect, this controls how much gain you put into the preamp. The higher the gain, the more distorted the tone. The balance knob controls the volume levels between the clean DI signal, in this case, everything below 320 Hertz, and the distorted signal. You'll want to tweak this to find your perfect balance between having a nice fat low end of the clean signal and the articulation and aggressiveness of the bass cutting through the mix with the distorted signal. In Singularity, you have the option between two very distinct bass preamps. Modern is modeled after a rat pedal, and classic is the kind of sound you would expect out of something like a Sansamp RBI preamp. You'll want to experiment with both of them depending on the style and sound you're going for. I personally tend to stick with modern most of the time. After that, we have the cab IR section. Here we have 5 different bass cabs and speaker combos to pick from, each named to convey the kind of vibe and sound you can expect when using them. You also have the option to load your own cab IRs too. So if you feel like none of the included cabs are doing it for you, you can load your own. You can also bypass the cab altogether if that's the kind of sound you're going for. If you don't want to use Singularity's amp section and prefer to use your own, you can bypass it completely and get a full clean DI signal by pressing this button here. And to make it extra clear that you're getting a clean DI signal only, the bass turns blue. And finally at the bottom right, here is what I call the master section. Let's start with pitch correction. It will probably confuse some people, but there is a reason we included this, I promise. When a bassist hits a note with extra force, the string's tension spikes momentarily, making the initial attack sharper in pitch than intended. I don't know if he was the first to do this, but one of the greatest metal producers ever, Andy Sneap, began applying subtle pitch correction to bass guitars to fix this problem. And this is why Singularity includes its pitch correct feature right out of the box, by correcting the intonation inconsistencies which result from aggressive playing of fretted instruments. If you plan on programming your MIDI bass at very high velocities, you'll probably want to turn this on. If you aren't going to be slamming the bass all the way, then you probably don't need to use it. Okay, Humanize here gives you direct control over subtle variations in the volume of notes and other micro differences that a real bass player naturally produces all in one knob. Instead of wrestling with every single MIDI note, making sure it's a slightly different velocity or a slightly off in timing like a real human would play, you can dial in as much or as little imperfection as you need using this one knob. And below that, we have the output gain, which, as you might suspect, controls the overall volume of the plugin. Next is MIDI mapping. Instead of loading up a separate page of parameters, you can click on the MIDI mapping button and a piano roll overlay will appear into the main window. From here, you'll be able to easily see which articulations fall under what MIDI note. Note that the L stands for latching. Latching means that you don't need to draw a MIDI note on the articulation as long as you wish to use that articulation. You can just draw a short eighth note, for example, and it'll keep that articulation active until you draw another key switch to change it. Okay, Now we move on to the main settings window. There's a lot of tweakability under the hood here, so I want to make sure I go over and explain it all. Library location lets you set where you installed the Singularity sample library at. In case you decide to move the library to a different hard drive, this lets you select that new location. Distortion quality lets you set how precise the modeling of the modern preamp is. You might find it to be pretty CPU hungry at its highest settings, so if that's the case for your computer, you can lower the quality. I personally leave it at normal, but you could go all the way up to YOLO if you like to live life on the edge. Distortion oversampling helps deal with aliasing caused in the digital domain. Settings can go from 2x all the way to 16x. At 8x, there's basically no aliasing to be worried about, but if aliasing really bothers you, 16x will help you sleep better at night. Personally, I just leave it at 2 or 4 at most. Animation quality controls the resolution of the base graphics and animations. If you find that Singularity is being a little bit too heavy on your CPU, you can lower or even turn off the fancy animations to save on RAM and CPU. MIDI settings we'll come back to in a second. Key switch settings simply shows you all of the key switches available in Singularity, what note on the piano roll they're assigned to, and the ability to change them from latch or momentary. Remember, use momentary if you want that articulation to only last as long as the MIDI note you draw. Generally, you use momentary if you need to do a key switch for a bar or two, whereas latch you would use if you planned for that key switch to be active for an entire section or song. Report a bug is an easy way for you to send us a bug report so we can put out a fix as fast as possible. It includes all the system information we need. Just copy paste it into your report along with a detailed explanation of the issue and how to reproduce it. Okay, let's go back to MIDI settings. In here, you'll find the ability to tweak things in relation to your MIDI input. Middle C lets you select what standard you'd like to use for middle C. There are 2 commonly used standards. One uses C3 as middle C, and the other uses C4. Most of the world uses C4 as middle C, but some DAWs like Cubase or Logic Pro default to using C3 as middle C. This setting lets you match your DAW's middle C standard. Otherwise, you might find your MIDI playback an octave lower or higher than you intended. A lot of people like to use Guitar Pro to export the MIDI bass from and use it in something like Singularity in their DAW. So here's a heads up. Guitar Pro uses C3 as middle C, meaning that MIDI will be an octave lower than intended if your DAW uses C4 as middle C. To fix that, either change it in your DAW if it has the option, or here in Singularity. MIDI channel lets you select what MIDI channel you want Singularity to listen to. Pitch wheel range lets you set the range both up and down you would like the pitch wheel to cover when using it to bend. How to program slides is a handy little guide we made to explain how slides work in Singularity and how to get the best results when using them. Slide shape controls the slide duration when a slide is happening. Linear means the slide duration is equal on all frets of the bass. Fretboard means the duration of the slides will get less and less as the frets get closer and closer to each other. Fretboard mimics the way a bassist would play a slide, but the option is there if you prefer the slides to be linear instead. Sample mode simply lets you change the bass from monophonic, meaning one note played at a time, or polyphonic, more than one note. Monophonic also introduces note on and note off behavior from popular vintage synths like the Minimoog. You can hear the difference especially when MIDI notes overlap. In mono mode, it'll stop playing the current note when the next note starts, even if the first note didn't finish yet. And if you release the second note while still holding the first note, it'll start playing the first note again, but with new attack. Vibrato control lets you select which MIDI CC you want to set as your vibrato control. By default, it's CC1, which is also the modulation wheel on a keyboard. Vibrato shape lets you select the type of vibrato sound you want. By default, the vibrato shape models how a bassist would play vibrato on a fretted bass. But you have the option to select fretless, tremolo bar, or even using an LFO like a synth would. Vibrato range allows you to select how wide you want your vibrato to be. In most cases, one semitone is what you'll want, but some people like to go wider. And vibrato speed lets you choose how fast the vibrato is performed. So as you can see, Singularity gives you a level of depth and control that just simply doesn't exist anywhere else. And I think that covers everything. If anything was left unclear, or if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us, or you can also let us know in the comments section. You can check out Singularity Virtual Bass in the link in the description below. Thank you for watching.